Welcome to Undercurrents, our daily news show from Unheard's Washington Bureau. Please make sure to subscribe here on the Undercurrents channel, wherever you download your podcasts, and of course over at undercurrents.tv for the full premium experience of the show. The entire world, alongside of course everybody here in the United States, is trying to digest exactly how Donald Trump pulled off this remarkable comeback from the Republican Party essentially abandoning him on January 6th. And when I say the Republican Party, I mean Republican politicians and officials. That is a very distinct category from Republican voters. And then ending up as somebody who sweeps the battlegrounds, comes in with what he has said is a mandate, with what Elon Musk has said is a mandate, the greatest political movement he thinks in history, according to Donald Trump himself. So how did it happen? Let's dive into the numbers. I'm joined now by Ryan Girdusky, who is the author of the National Populist newsletter and has been digging into the data, going super viral everywhere, Ryan. So first of all, thank you for being here and for digging into these numbers so granularly.
Sure, absolutely. Love to be here.
What is your big takeaway? I mean, because you have a lot of really specific takeaways that are fascinating, and you were one of the first people I saw finding some of these patterns. But what is your big takeaway now that we've had, almost 24 hours to digest the results?
That it was bad branding to be a Democrat as a whole. And because the fact is that it's not like 2016 where you could sit there and say, that there's a single demographic, mostly was white men in rural and suburban America, that propelled Donald Trump to victory in 2016, or that it was a track of Asians and mostly Hispanics that moved towards Trump in 2020. It was across the board. I mean, Trump gained in every single state, and in super blue states, Rhode Island, Connecticut, New York, New Jersey, Illinois, Maryland, he moved 11 points more Republican. I mean, this is unheard of. Right now, California, there's a lot of vote left to be cast, but Trump's only down, I think it was like 14 or 16 points in California. That's half of what he was at. He doubled basically his percentage margin, or cut it rather in half from 2020. Republicans gained state legislative seats in Vermont. They gained 18 state House seats and 5 state Senate seats in Vermont and flipped the lieutenant governor's office. They gained throughout the entire Midwest. Democrats lost supermajorities in the New York State Senate and the Nevada State House. I think as of the last time I checked, Tim Walz is set to have a Republican state House in Minnesota, and the Pennsylvania State House flipped. There were wins way down ballot for Republicans in a way that seemed preposterous and impossible in deep blue states where he cut them. So you're going from very, very lily white states like Vermont to more diverse areas like New York City. And though the trends are not even, they are very consistently in his favor. So his appeal was large with everybody. And I think it is a general discontent with the Democratic Party and a discontent with the mood of America that is not going well right now, that things are not as they're supposed to be.
So we had a Democratic strategist on this show about a little over a week ago, and
how'd that go for him?
I talked to some Democrats. Well, he was working on the Gallego campaign, which I suppose could still turn out all right in Arizona, but I talked to some
probably gonna lose
Democrats, which is actually pretty interesting. Senator Carrie Lake. Wow, the National Populist newsletter gains an interesting storyline with that.
I didn't even see that one coming. But there's 1 million votes. She's only done 60,000. The Green Party took 2% of the vote too. I think that she probably decent chance to be a senator.
Well, let's talk about this because the suburbs of Phoenix, the suburbs of Philadelphia, Milwaukee were what Democrats were counting on, and Democratic strategists were saying we are seeing in focus groups women who are that Julia Roberts voter. That's why that group put out that ad urging women to vote against their husbands. The last ballot box, the last place you can choose, blah, blah, blah. And this was supposed to be what rescued Democrats, is that they were going to offset any of Trump's gains in rural areas by turning out women. Men are low propensity voters, so that gender gap it's better for Kamala Harris than it is for Donald Trump. That isn't the case as we're looking at some exit polling. What are you seeing in that dynamic?
And you know what? It was never the case. This was always a pipe dream. If you look at voting, what's the right word? Where like voting through like a series of time, right? There like a bunch of polls or the series of time, a collection of polls rather. I'm being very inarticulate because I'm on 2 hours of sleep. But if you look at like a series of snapshots of polls, there was never a time where Kamala was outdoing Hillary among women. Hillary and Biden received the same percentage of the vote of the women vote in 2016 and 2020. The illusion that women came out in droves was completely, sorry, the margins were the same, not the percentages. I take that back. But the margins that they won by with women were exactly the same. And there was never a time where if you looked at public polls that have made crosstabs available, that Trump was doing worse among women than he did either one at the time. It was a complete fantasy of the left. I'll take you on my track of that night, of last night, of the election night. First thing first is right north of Indianapolis, there was a suburban county, I think it's Hamilton County. The left was making this big thing. Oh my gosh, we're going to flip it. We're going to flip it. This proves Ann Seltzer's right. The early vote was 50-47. By the time election day came around, Trump had actually gained in it by the time the election vote started coming out. So it completely refuted what Ann Seltzer had said. And the idea that Midwestern suburban women were voting against Trump was a complete delusion.
Well, that county's interesting because we saw something similar in Waukesha County, and in Hamilton County, last I checked like a couple hours ago, it was Dems had gained like 1 percentage point, and it's the same thing in Waukesha County. And then actually Republicans gained in the other WoW County of Ozaukee County, and then different parts outside of like Bucks County, Republicans gained. So what Democrats may have seen in their focus groups, it could have existed, but it was just super small.
But the 1% is not enough to justify making your whole campaign screw your husband. Exactly. Like that's not enough. Like this is not like a firepower. This is not like a Votara Donald Trump tune that everyone sits there and sings that sucks in their head. Then Taylor County, Kentucky comes out. Trump moves 6 points in rural America. It's the first rural county that completely comes out, which shows that the ceiling had not been hit yet for Trump with the rurals. Florida comes out, and was Osceola County is the name of it, where it's a large Puerto Rican population. Trump dominated there, won it, flipped it, which was insane. Wins Miami-Dade by 11 points, but that's heavily Cuban, so I wasn't sure if that was a statistical anomaly. But the fact that Osceola was moving to the right and Orange County was moving to the right, which also is very Hispanic, non-Cuban Hispanic, show that there was a large disparity from what you heard in the media. So First thing, suburban women in Midwest not coming out and moving to Kamala in big numbers. Then the rural numbers were moving. Then the Hispanic numbers were moving for Trump. There's 2 more things I looked at. One was the exit polls from Georgia, when 1 in 4 black men were voting for Trump. It sat there. I mean, who knows if exit polls are correct? 9 times out of 10, I would say they're not. But that would be a tremendous thing to be off by. So I assumed, and I'd heard from people on the ground in Georgia, they called me at 6:30, said that they had won it, and Trump was going to win by at least 1 to 2 points because there was not enough at Metro Atlanta coming in. Black male voters a lot of times were choosing between the couch and choosing between Kamala and Trump, and a lot of times they were choosing the couch. The reason that the overall margin of black voters, as far as a proportion of the country, was 11% instead of 13% was because black men were not showing up to vote. That's why I've tweeted this repeatedly. The left was saying, look at the women, look at the women, look at the women vote. The women vote's so big compared to men. It's so big compared to men because it was black men specifically who weren't voting, who vote 85 out of 100 times for a Democrat. So was it actually a net loss for Democrats going into the election? And then the last point is when Loudoun County came out and moved 8 points to the right. I texted JD's team. I texted my family. I said, you can all go to bed because it's over. He won. There's no way. There's no path for her at this point.
I mean, that was incredible. And Ryan, you run a group that like sort of works on the issues that exploded in Loudoun County in 2020, 2021. And what did you see? Because I'm curious, in California, we're looking at a couple of referendums. There are always referendums in California, but looking at where voters came down and the coalition that turned out for Trump or didn't turn out for Kamala Harris. Is this a vibe shift? Is this a repudiation of left policies, like far left policies on crime, on marijuana in Florida? What's your sense of that? Because you actually do you help candidates who are running on issues
for
like
school
this.
board. Yeah, for school board issues, I do school board campaigns. I think there's part of that. Remember, a lot of the local news outside the national news was a lot about migrant crimes in Montgomery County, Maryland, or right across the river in Loudoun County. There was a ton of those issues. There was an MS-13, I it was in Virginia or it was in Maryland at this point, but it was in one of the two, where a student who was a member of MS-13, a gang member, was allowed to go to two different public schools after being arrested by ICE, and where I think he either raped or sodomized a student. I forget. Those were local stories, were penetrating the news for sure. But I think if you take a step back and look at the entire globe, Modi underperforming in India, the Conservatives losing in the UK, Macron getting his party kicked out of the legislature in France, there is a feeling overall across the entire globe of not only uncertainty but discomfort or just liking what the current political mood is, the post-COVID political mood. And it is something that is broad and it's uniting a lot of different people. I think that is part of it, and they just laid the blame because, I mean, Democrats can say inflation is not real, but everyone feels differently right now about how they have to spend their bills or interest rates on their homes or, a bunch of other things. They feel like it does not work and is not working to help them. So there was a lot of that going on. I think had Kamala not decided and Joe Biden not decided to make repealing all of Donald Trump's immigration policies the center of their their post-election victory and the center of their administration and flooding the country with migrants, I don't know if Donald Trump would have won.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. Let's just stay in Loudoun County. Like, actually, by some metrics, I think recently the wealthiest county in the entire country. It's right outside Washington, D.C., as you mentioned, sort of up there with Fairfax County, but used to be very rural. If you go out there and you talk to especially some of those parents that were involved in the issues that you've done so much work on, Ryan, it is a multi-ethnic coalition. It's odd. And Donald Trump at the same time, I guess it's not odd, but if you're a Democrat and you're talking to some of these folks, you would think it was odd. And Donald Trump, on the other hand, seems to have done very well with voters outside of affluent counties, but here in Loudoun, where, people were disappointed with school board elections after 2020, 2021. I felt like you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but just remembering there was some wave of disappointment at one point. So is it the low propensity voters turning out for a presidential election that didn't turn out in a midterm or don't turn out for local elections that did it here?
Partially. I mean, remember in the 2023 Loudoun County elections, Republicans basically won everything. They won the sheriff's race. We flipped, I think, 2 school board seats in Loudoun. I think the progressive majority is a 5-4 majority, and Republicans didn't run someone in 1 or 2 of the seats. They could have won them. They won the sheriff's race. I think they won most of the down ballot races in Loudoun did go Republican. But take a step back from Loudoun for a second, and let's look at a state like New Jersey, which Kamala only won by 4 points. Since 2021, there has not been a single month, not 1 month since the beginning of 2021, where Democrats enrolled more new voters than Republicans. Republicans have enrolled more voters every month consistently for over 3 years. There was clearly an issue going on that they were not willing to address. And it's true. I mean, the Republicans out-registered Democrats in California. They out-registered them in Colorado. Something was going on where the brand of being a Democrat was being, I think, connected to the, let me speak to your manager, white woman, the radical Black activist who talks about being a victim all the time, the person who looks at Hispanics only as being illegal aliens, talking down to them, and demanding seeing the world in the prison through victimhood and people who are, conquerors, And I think that really irritated a lot of people. And I think that really moved probably a lot of people to the right. We saw it also move to the right during Glenn Youngkin's race in 2021. So a lot of these things started way before Trump ran this time, but the trends just accelerated so much more.
So you, again, are the author of the National Populist newsletter, and Sher Brown, one of the only remaining Democratic populists, went down in Ohio, lost to Bernie Moreno in a race that a lot of people were, I was very surprised to see the results. And actually, even just the margin of victory for Moreno, I was surprised by. I hadn't been watching the race too closely. Tammy Baldwin also has some populist inclinations, was kind of running and saying she agreed with Trump on tariffs, right? She ran an ad on that or something to that effect. But it didn't work out for Sher Brown, one of the preeminent, only remaining Democrats who likes to talk like a populist. Do you have a sense of what happened in Ohio, Ryan?
Yeah, I know. I know. I was talking to Bernie's team, and they said to me their internals had Trump plus 11 in Ohio and Bernie plus 6. I think that's basically what he won by. It was maybe like on the margin. So I knew where the race was going. Look, Sherrod has a legacy of being this incredible campaigner who can win in a purple state. But let's be honest, he ran in 2018, he ran in 2012, and he ran in 2006. He's had very, very good cycles to run in. And the cycle has just ran out. That's part of it. He is not that much of a populist. He is a complete open borders liberal on the issue of immigration. He does not even speak like John Fetterman. Remember when the immigration crisis was going on, John Fetterman was the one who said, hey, let's put forward H.R. 2, the Republican House immigration bill, and just get rid of the part about dreamers, and I'm okay with it. Sher Brown would never make that kind of move for that. Sher Brown was a dyed-in-the-wool Democrat partisan of the very old school who had moments where he sounded like, he was doing something, but it was very, very, very partisan. He only ever outran Obama, I think, by 3 points in 2012. He ran Obama by 3 points in Ohio. So he was never that amazing a campaigner. He got very lucky with which election cycles he was put into. He is not Susan Collins, who has won in very tough election cycles, like 2008 when Obama was on the ticket. His legacy, I guess, speaks louder than the actual results do.
It looks like Springfield, Ohio precinct showed what gains for Republicans?
Yeah, they care about those cats, baby.
Well, you also, I don't know if you have an update on AOC's precincts.
So it flipped 25 points for Republicans. It was a 70...
25?
25. It's one of most in America.
So this is going to be Black and Hispanic men, potentially Puerto Rican voters who were apparently very turned off by Tony Hinchcliffe.
There's not many Black voters in her district. It's mostly Hispanic, Asians, and whites. So in 2020, Trump got 22% and Biden got 77%. When Lee Zeldin was running for governor, which was considered this huge, wave in New York, Glenn Youngkin got 31 and Hochul got 69. Last night, Trump got not Youngkin, Zeldin. I'm sorry about that. Zeldin got 31, Hochul got 69. Last night, Trump got 34, Harris got 65.
Oh my goodness!
It is a absolute, it's a 25-point swing. Maybe it won't be the biggest movement to the right of any House seat, but it's going to be in the top 10, top 5. I find it very hard.
A perfect transition to what I'm seeing right now is the billion-dollar question, and I can think of a few people better equipped to address it than you, Ryan, which is, are these gains durable when Donald Trump is not on the ballot? You just mentioned the Lee Zeldin example, and we're looking at the numbers in Florida where you see 57% of people who are voting in Florida actually went and said that they would enshrine abortion access in the state constitution. Obviously, it failed because it didn't hit the 60% threshold, but that's a lot of people coming out for Trump and abortion at the same time. But when Donald Trump's not on the ticket, if it's Lee Zeldin or Ron DeSantis or J.D. Vance, does this coalition turn out in the same numbers?
That's a really, really important question, and one that we won't have right now. Look, I mean, take the Bronx, right, which is a perfect example. So since 2020, we've had in the Bronx, we've had a presidential election in 2020. We had a mayoral election in 2021. We had a gubernatorial election in 2022. We had a city council election in 2023, and then we had a presidential election in 2024. There were 5 elections in the 4 years. Or 4 elections in the 4 years, I should say. What did we see from those results? The Republican Party gained in every single solitary one from the previous election, in every single one. And there is no Republican Party in the Bronx to speak of. It is not like, Miami-Dade, that they were spending millions of dollars to make it a Republican county. That doesn't exist there. It is completely natural. Now, what we did see, however, like in New York, in Connecticut, in Massachusetts, in Maryland, was we saw a lot of ticket splitting by these voters who voted for Trump and then voted for the Democrat down ballot. That's not unusual when you're new to a party, when someone introduces you to a party. When Ronald Reagan won and Richard Nixon won the Deep South for the very first time since Reconstruction, what happened was they were voting for Ronald Reagan and Richard Nixon, and then voting for, Democrats like Strom Thurmond and other Democrats that they had known for a while. And they stayed with the Democratic Party in the South. I mean, really till 2010. It took decades for them to really move away from the party and vote federally the same exact way. I think that we could see that from a lot of these new voters, that they'll sit there and they'll stick with the Democratic Party, at least locally, or down ballot for quite some time. I don't know if it's going to accelerate that quickly. But as long as the Democratic Party doubles and quadruples with being the party of woke women and, pro-criminality, and we can't have good schools because it makes people feel bad and everything is racist. Everyone is a racist and sexist. It is a giant, and every person is just, down to the cubicle of their identity. It is going to turn off a lot of people. And I think that people get very frozen in time. Political people get very frozen in time. You think about politics in many times how you grew up with them in like for me, I'm 37. So a lot of people look at the Republican Party before Trump and said, it must be Bush. They must, they hate gay marriage. They do this. They're all evangelical. They're all white, because that's the time that they were frozen in. If the Democratic Party sits there and says, no, this is our lane, this is who we are, and they will stick with us because this is who they were 20 years ago. They cared about illegal immigration. They are all, these kinds of, they're not, American citizens, or they don't realize whatever. So they stick down to this just raw identity politics that doesn't deliver any material benefit to them. I think that they will. I think the trend will continue. I think there's no stopping that. And we'll see if they do change. I will say one more very, very important thing. The results in Dearborn are very, very important. I do believe in my heart that this is the last election. I think this, where you will see the Democrat treat Israel, the subject of Israel, as a as a middle of the road thing. I think the issue of Israel being a bipartisan issue is very quickly coming to an end. I think that they will choose the Muslim vote over the Jewish vote very, very soon, based upon the demography where they are and how much more we are increasing our Muslim population through legal immigration. In the very near future, we're going to have more Muslims in this country than Jews, and they are going to be more important swing states like Georgia and Michigan than Jews who live in New York, New Jersey, and Florida. And they're going to sit there and say, all right, our time as being a pro-Israel party is over now.
Could get awkward for them when it comes to defending the books that are in public schools. Ryan Girdusky, author of the National Populist newsletter. Thank you. Go get some sleep. Thank you for giving us a slice of your time in this very, very busy day.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for tuning in. You can probably tell I am in the same studio, wearing the same clothes. It's actually not a illusion. I really have not changed or left this studio, or left a studio, I should say, for 24 hours now. So I'm going to go ahead and get some sleep. But thank you so much for subscribing. We had so much fun on the live stream. Had an excellent big picture conversation with Zed Jelani. And Ryan Girdusky was so deep in that data that I feel like I came away from that conversation, even though I've been poring over these numbers all day myself, which I'm with a much better understanding of what happened, I should say, on Tuesday night and what will happen in the future. So thank you for tuning in. Please make sure to subscribe. It helps us so much to subscribe on the YouTube channel. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and subscribe for the premium experience over at undercurrents.tv. We'll be back soon. We have a great guest coming up tomorrow, so make sure to stay tuned.